My name is Virgil, 36 years old, and I never thought I'd have to choose between my son and my family. When I found my 6-year-old Lucas's beloved toys burning in the BBQ pit, something inside me snapped. As a single dad, I fought to protect my son's gentle spirit, but that day revealed just how toxic my own blood could be. The burning stuffed animals were just the beginning of a family implosion no one saw coming. Before I get into how my family betrayed my son, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, and hit subscribe if you want to hear more stories about standing up for your kids. I should probably start by giving you some background about me and my family. I'm a software engineer living in Seattle, divorced for about 2 years now. My ex-wife Amanda and I share custody of our son Lucas, who spends weekends and Wednesday nights with me. Despite the divorce, we've managed to maintain a decent co-parenting relationship, mainly because we both agree on what matters most: Lucas's well-being. Lucas is an amazing kid. At 6 years old, he's already showing incredible creativity and intelligence. He loves drawing, reading, and has this incredible imagination that can transform a cardboard box into a spaceship or a blanket fort into a dragon's lair. But Lucas is also a sensitive child. He feels things deeply, gets emotional during movies, and has always been drawn to stuffed animals for comfort. His absolute favorite was a stuffed panda named Mr. Bamboo that he'd had since he was 3. That panda went everywhere with him, especially when he was feeling anxious or unsure. My family, on the other hand, comes from a very different world. My father, Frank, is retired military, 26 years in the Army, and believes in raising strong men above all else. My mother, Elaine, has always been the peacekeeper, smoothing things over and trying to hold everyone together regardless of the cost. Then there's my younger brother, Derek, the golden child who followed in my father's footsteps with his tough alpha male personality. Derek has 2 boys of his own ages, 8 and 10, being raised in the same man-up tradition my father believes in so strongly. Growing up, I was always the disappointment. While Derek excelled at sports and hunting trips with Dad, I preferred computers and books. My intellectual pursuits were tolerated, but never celebrated the way Derek's football trophies were. There was always this unspoken message that I wasn't living up to the family standard of masculinity. When I got into MIT on a scholarship, my father's response was, "Well, I guess you found something you're good at." Not exactly the pride you hope for from your dad. This tension only grew worse when Lucas came along. From the very beginning, my family had opinions about how I should be raising him. When he was 3 and wanted a kitchen playset for Christmas, my father refused to contribute. "Buy him some Legos or a baseball glove," he said. "Don't turn him into a sissy." When Lucas cried after falling at a family gathering last year, Derek told him to walk it off like a man, even though he was only 5 at the time. These incidents had been building up for years, creating this growing knot of anxiety whenever family gatherings approached. After the divorce, it got even worse. My father and brother seemed to view my failed marriage as confirmation of my weakness, and doubled down on their determination to toughen up Lucas to avoid him becoming like me. The fact that I wasn't devastated by the divorce and actually maintained a healthy relationship with Amanda only confused them more. I tried to limit our visits, but there was always this pull of obligation. My mother would call emotional, saying how much she missed Lucas and how important family was. She'd promised to talk to Dad and Derek about respecting my parenting choices, and like a fool, I'd believe her, giving them one more chance than another. The pressure to attend the annual summer BBQ this year was intense. My mother called daily for a week, my father sent rare text messages asking if we were coming, and even my Aunt Sophia reached out saying how much everyone wanted to see Lucas. Against my better judgment, I finally agreed. Lucas was excited too, mainly about seeing his cousins, though I noticed he packed extra stuffed animals in his backpack before we left. When I asked about it, he just shrugged and said, "Just in case I need them." Looking back, I should have recognized that anxiety for what it was, his intuition warning him. "Are we really going to have fun, Dad?" Lucas asked as I helped him into his car seat that morning. The hesitation in his voice made me pause. "Of course, buddy. And if at any point you're not having fun, you just tell me and we can leave." Deal, I promised him, hoping I wouldn't have to follow through. Little did I know that promise would be tested sooner and more severely than I could have imagined. The morning of the BBQ started like any other weekend day. Lucas woke me up at 7:30 already buzzing with a mix of excitement and nervousness about seeing the extended family. I made his favorite breakfast dinosaur-shaped pancakes, hoping to start the day on a positive note. As he ate, he arranged his stuffed animals around his plate, giving Mr. Bamboo the seat of honor next to him. "Dad, do you think Grandpa will like my new drawings?" Lucas asked, referring to the folder of artwork he'd prepared as gifts. The hopefulness in his voice made my chest tighten. "I'm sure he will." I lied, knowing my father would probably glance at them and mumble something about wasting time on doodles. And if he doesn't say much, remember that's just how Grandpa is. It doesn't mean he doesn't like them. Lucas nodded solemnly, already learning at 6 to lower his expectations for emotional validation from my side of the family. As he went to get dressed, I packed a small emergency bag with Lucas's favorite snacks, a change of clothes, and his tablet loaded with games and movies. Over the past couple of years, I'd learned to prepare escape routes from family gatherings. The drive to my parents' suburban home took 45 minutes. They lived in one of those cookie-cutter developments with perfect lawns and similar-looking houses where the homeowners association would send letters if your grass grew half an inch too high. My father took immense pride in having the most manicured yard on the block. Another competition he never failed to mention he was winning. Lucas clutched Mr. Bamboo tighter as we pulled into the driveway. Already I could see the gathering was in full swing. My brother's oversized pickup truck was parked prominently in the driveway, American flag decal gleaming on the back window. Several other cars lined the street, suggesting most of the extended family had already arrived. "Remember what we talked about," I said to Lucas as I helped him out of the car. "If anyone says something that makes you feel bad, you come and tell me, okay?" "Okay, Dad," he whispered, slipping his small hand into mine as we approached the backyard gate. The scene that greeted us was quintessential American family, BBQ. My father at the massive grill spatula in one hand and beer in the other. My mother flitting between guests with trays of appetizers. Derek and his wife Caitlin, holding court by the coolers, their 2 boys, Jason and Tyler, roughhousing in the pool under minimal supervision. Aunts, uncles, and cousins were scattered across the sprawling backyard, some playing cornhole, others chatting in clusters around the patio tables. "Well, look who finally decided to join us." My father's booming voice carried across the yard as he spotted us. He wiped his hands on his King of the Grill apron and strode over. "There's my grandson, getting bigger every time I see him." He went to ruffle Lucas's hair, but Lucas flinched slightly, clutching Mr. Bamboo closer to his chest. My father's smile tightened at the corners. "Still carrying around that stuffed toy, huh? Might be time to think about putting those away soon, sport. You're getting to be a big boy now." Before I could intervene, my mother appeared beside us. "Frank, leave him. B. He just got here." She bent down to Lucas's level. "I made your favorite cookies, sweetheart. Chocolate chip with extra chocolate chips just like you like." Lucas managed a small smile, and I felt myself relax slightly. Maybe this wouldn't be so bad after all. That feeling lasted about 20 minutes. As Lucas tried to integrate with his cousins, I watched from a distance while making small talk with relatives. Jason and Tyler, Derek's boys, were playing a game that seemed to consist mainly of tackling each other and seeing who could make the biggest splash in the pool. When Lucas approached with Mr. Bamboo tucked safely in the crook of his arm, they immediately stopped. "Why do you still have a stuffed animal?" "That's for babies." Jason, the older one, said loudly enough for nearby adults to hear. "Mr. Bamboo is my friend," Lucas replied, his voice small but dignified. Tyler snickered. "Babies talk to toys. Are you a baby?" I started to move toward them, but my brother Derek intercepted me. "Let the boys work it out," he said, hand firmly on my shoulder. "That's how they learn to stand up for themselves." "He's 6, Derek. They're older and bigger than him. Exactly why he needs to toughen up." Derek took a swig of his beer. "You're not doing him any favors babying him, Verge." I shrugged off his hand. "I'm not having this conversation again." As the afternoon wore on, Lucas became increasingly withdrawn. He tried playing with his cousins but kept coming back to sit beside me or finding quiet corners to arrange his stuffed animals. He'd brought 3 besides Mr. Bamboo: a small blue elephant, a lion with a soft mane, and a turtle with a patchwork shell. Each time I checked on him, he seemed to be having hushed conversations with them, creating a safe world within the chaos of the gathering. My father made several pointed comments throughout the day. When the kids were called for lunch, he looked at Lucas's plate with its carefully separated foods. Lucas didn't like different foods touching and said, "In the army, we ate whatever was put in front of us and were grateful for it." When Lucas asked for help opening his juice box, my father told him, "Figure it out yourself. That's how you learn." Each time I intervened as diplomatically as possible, trying to shield Lucas without creating a scene. But I could feel my patience wearing thin, stretched like an overextended rubber band ready to snap. The breaking point was coming, though I didn't know it yet. Around 4 in the afternoon, my mother asked if I could help her in the kitchen. Several dishes needed to be brought out for the second wave of food, and everyone else was occupied with the volleyball game that had started in the side yard. I hesitated, glancing at Lucas, who was sitting under the big oak tree with his stuffed animals. "He'll be fine for a few minutes," my mother assured me. "The boys are all playing volleyball with their father." Reluctantly, I followed her inside. The kitchen was sweltering from hours of cooking, and my mother put me to work immediately, loading heavy trays with corn on the cob-baked beans and her famous potato salad. We made small talk as we worked, carefully avoiding any mention of the obvious tension between me and my father. This was my mother's specialty, pretending everything was fine when it clearly wasn't. "Lucas is such a sweet boy," she said, as she sprinkled paprika on deviled eggs. "So sensitive and thoughtful." "Yes, he is," I agreed cautiously, waiting for the but that inevitably followed such observations. "Your father just worries about him. The world can be hard on sensitive boys." There it was. The world or family who should be supporting him. I couldn't help the edge in my voice. My mother sighed. "Virgil, please. Can we just have one nice day without this conversation?" Before I could respond, I heard Lucas's voice from the backyard, high-pitched and distressed. "Dad, Dad." I dropped the tray I was holding and bolted through the kitchen door. Lucas was running across the yard toward the house, tears streaming down his face, his backpack clutched to his chest. "What's wrong? What happened?" I knelt down to his level. "I can't find them," he sobbed. "I left them under the tree to go to the bathroom, and now they're gone." "Your stuffed animals?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. He nodded frantically. "Mr. Bamboo and everyone. I looked everywhere." I stood up, scanning the yard. The volleyball game had paused, and several family members were watching our exchange with varying expressions of concern or annoyance. Derek's boys were suspiciously absent. "Jason, Tyler," I called out. "Have you seen Lucas's toys?" After a moment, they appeared from around the side of the house, expressions too innocent to be genuine. "No, Uncle Virgil," Jason said. "We've been playing volleyball the whole time." Something about their synchronized denial raised immediate red flags. I looked to Derek, who was watching the exchange with an odd half-smile. "Boys, if you took your cousin's toys as a joke, now's the time to return them," I said firmly. "We didn't take any baby toys," Tyler insisted, exchanging a glance with his father. Lucas tugged at my hand. "Dad, please help me find them." We began searching the yard methodically, looking under tables, in bushes, and around play areas. Several of my more sympathetic relatives joined the search, including my Aunt Sophia and Uncle Robert. Lucas became more distraught with each passing minute, his sobs quieting into a kind of shocked, hiccuping silence that was even more heartbreaking. It was my Uncle Robert who made the discovery. He was checking around the main BBQ pit when he suddenly stopped, his posture stiffening. "Virgil," he called, his voice carefully controlled. "You might want to come here." I jogged over, still holding Lucas's hand. As we approached, I saw what had caused my uncle's reaction. There, in the glowing coals of the BBQ pit, were the unmistakable remains of stuffed animals. The blue fabric of the elephant, still barely recognizable. The singed mane of the lion. The melted plastic eyes of the turtle. And worst of all, Mr. Bamboo, his distinctive black and white pattern now charred beyond repair, stuffing, spilling out like some grotesque autopsy. Lucas's scream will haunt me forever. It wasn't just the cry of a child who had lost beloved toys. It was the sound of innocence confronting deliberate cruelty for the first time and being shattered by it. I picked Lucas up, immediately holding him against my chest as his body shook with sobs. Around us, the gathering had gone silent. Even the distant traffic seemed to have paused in respect for this small tragedy. "Who did this?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. "Who did this?" My eyes scanned the circle of family members, many of whom had the decency to look horrified or uncomfortable. But one face stood out: my brother Derek, standing with arms crossed, a smirk playing at the corner of his mouth. "Derek," I advanced toward him, still holding Lucas. "Did you do this?" "The boys might have gotten carried away," he admitted, without a hint of remorse. "But honestly, Verge, it's probably for the best. He needs to toughen up. Boys don't play with dolls." I felt something snap inside me, a restraint I'd maintained for years, suddenly giving way. They weren't dolls, they were stuffed animals, and they were important to him. "They were crutches," my father interjected, stepping forward to stand beside Derek. "The boy needs to learn to stand on his own 2 feet without emotional props." "Emotional props?" I was nearly shouting now. "He's 6 years old." "I was shooting my first rifle at 6, my father countered. "No one coddled me." "And look how well you turned out," I snapped back. My mother hurried between us. "Please, everyone, calm down. I'm sure the boys meant no harm. We can buy new toys, better ones." "That's not the point, Mom." I was struggling to keep my composure, while still comforting Lucas, who had buried his face in my neck, his tears soaking my shirt. "They destroyed something precious to Lucas deliberately, and neither Dad nor Derek thinks there's anything wrong with that." "It's a valuable lesson," Derek insisted. "The sooner he learns that the world isn't going to coddle him, the better." I stared at my brother, truly seeing him, perhaps for the first time. The casual cruelty, the smug superiority, the absolute certainty that his way was right. And beside him, my father, cut from the same cloth, nodding in agreement. These were men who would rather break a child's spirit than allow it to flourish in a way they didn't understand. "A lesson," I echoed, my voice dropping to a deadly calm. "Fine. Here's a lesson for you. Actions have consequences." I turned to the gathered family members. "I apologize for cutting the day short, but Lucas and I will be leaving now. Anyone who thinks burning a child's beloved possessions is acceptable is not someone we need in our lives." "You're overreacting," Derek called after me, as I started walking toward the house, Lucas still in my arms. "This is exactly why he's so soft, running away every time things get tough." I stopped and turned slowly. Protecting my son from cruelty isn't running away. It's what fathers are supposed to do. "I'm protecting my nephews too," Derek shot back, "from growing up thinking it's okay to be a weakling who can't handle the real world." My father stepped forward, his face flushed with anger, or perhaps embarrassment at the public nature of our confrontation. "Virgil, enough of this drama. Put the boy down and let's discuss this like adults." "There's nothing to discuss. You burned his toys. He's upset. We're leaving." "This is what I've been telling you for years," my father said, gesturing wildly. "This soft parenting of yours is creating a boy who'll never become a man. Is it any wonder Amanda left you?" The mention of my ex-wife was a calculated blow, aimed precisely where he thought I was most vulnerable. In the past, it might have worked. Today, it only confirmed I was making the right decision. "Amanda left because we grew apart, Dad, not because of my parenting. In fact, she fully supports how I'm raising Lucas because, unlike you, she wants a son who can express his emotions, not bury them until they turn toxic." My father's face darkened. "Don't you lecture me about raising sons. I raised 2 of them. And look how well that turned out. One son who thinks burning children's toys is acceptable, and another who's finally had enough of your bullying." Lucas lifted his head from my shoulder. "Dad, can we please go?" he whispered, his voice ragged from crying. "Yes, but if we're going right now." My mother rushed forward, tears in her eyes. "Virgil, please don't leave like this. We can fix this. We're family." "Family doesn't do what was done today, Mom. Family protects each other." "It was just toys," she pleaded. "We'll buy new ones. Better ones." It wasn't just toys. It was a message that Lucas's feelings don't matter, that who he is isn't good enough. I won't expose him to that anymore. By now, several relatives had gathered around, creating an audience for our family meltdown. Some looked uncomfortable, Others seemed almost entertained by the drama. My Aunt Sophia stepped forward and placed a hand on my arm. "Virgil, I understand why you're upset. What happened was wrong. But please don't make permanent decisions in temporary anger." I appreciated her attempt at peacemaking, but my mind was made up. This isn't temporary anger, Aunt Sophia. This is years of the same pattern finally becoming clear. I just wish I'd seen it sooner and spared Lucas this pain. Derek, seemingly incapable of reading the room, decided to make things worse. Always so dramatic. This is why your marriage failed, you know. Too emotional, just like your kid. I felt Lucas stiffen in my arms at the mention of the divorce, another tender spot being deliberately prodded. Something cold and final settled in my chest. "Lucas, go wait in the car for a minute," I said, setting him down. "I'll be right there." "But Dad..." "It's okay, buddy. Just 1 minute." I handed him the car keys. "You can pick the music for the ride home." Once Lucas was out of earshot, I turned to Derek. "You know what's pathetic? A grown man so insecure in his own masculinity that he needs to bully a 6-year-old to feel strong. What kind of father teaches his sons that cruelty is strength?" Derek's face flushed red. "Don't you dare question my parenting." "Why not? You've been questioning mine for years. The difference is, my son knows he's loved exactly as he is. Can yours say the same?" My brother lunged forward, but our Uncle Robert stepped between us. "That's enough, both of you. There are children present." My father grabbed Derek's shoulder. "He's not worth it. Let him leave if he wants to be so high and mighty." I looked around at the family, gathering now thoroughly disrupted. Some relatives were pretending to be busy with food or drinks, avoiding the conflict. Others watched openly, choosing sides with their expressions. My mother stood wringing her hands, torn between her husband and her son, ultimately paralyzed by her unwillingness to truly confront the dysfunction. "I'm sorry for ruining the BBQ," I said to no one in particular. "But I'm not sorry for standing up for Lucas." I walked toward the house, intending to collect our belongings, when I noticed the BBQ pit again. On impulse, I grabbed the long tongs from beside the grill and carefully fished out what remained of Mr. Bamboo. The once white synthetic fur was now black with soot. The stuffing partially melted, but some of the face was still recognizable. I wrapped the remains in a clean napkin from the table. As I walked through the house to the front door, my mother followed me, still pleading. "Virgil, please. Your father doesn't mean half of what he says. He's from a different generation." "That excuse stopped working a long time ago, Mom. Being from a different generation isn't a free pass to be cruel." What am I supposed to tell everyone? The fact that she was more concerned about appearances than her grandson's feelings only confirmed my decision. Tell them whatever you want. Tell them I overreacted. Tell them I'm too sensitive. Just like my son. I don't care anymore. I walked out the front door without looking back. Lucas was in the car, exactly where I'd asked him to wait. His small face was pressed against the window, eyes red and swollen from crying. When I got in, he immediately asked the question I'd been dreading. "Why did they burn Mr. Bamboo, Dad? What did I do wrong?" My heart shattered all over again. "You didn't do anything wrong, Lucas. Not one single thing. Some people just don't understand that it's okay for boys to like stuffed animals and be sensitive. But why would they hurt my friends on purpose? How do you explain toxic masculinity to a 6-year-old? How do you tell your child that his grandfather and uncle believe hurting him is somehow helping him? Sometimes grown-ups make really bad choices because they were taught the wrong things when they were little. Grandpa and Uncle Derek think boys shouldn't have stuffed animals or cry, but they're wrong. There's nothing wrong with having feelings or liking soft things." Lucas was quiet for a moment, processing this. Then he asked, "Are they bad people, Dad?" I sighed, trying to find the balance between honesty and nuance. "No, buddy. They're not bad people. They're people who've made bad choices. There's a difference." As we drove home in silence, Lucas eventually fell asleep, emotionally exhausted. I glanced at him in the rearview mirror. His face still marked with tear tracks, and made a silent promise that I would never allow anyone to hurt him like this again, even if it meant cutting off my entire family. The next morning, my phone was flooded with notifications. 23 text messages, 11 missed calls, and numerous voicemails, all from family members with opinions about what had happened. I ignored them all, focusing instead on Lucas, who had woken up asking for Mr. Bamboo before remembering the events of the previous day. I made us a special breakfast of chocolate chip pancakes shaped like pandas, trying to coax a smile from him. It worked briefly, but the shadow of yesterday's trauma lingered. When he asked if we could try to fix Mr. Bamboo, I had to gently explain that some things once broken can't be repaired in the same way. But we can honor Mr. Bamboo, I suggested. Maybe we could have a special ceremony for him, and then find a new friend who needs a good home. Lucas considered this, pushing his pancakes around his plate. Could we get another panda? Not to replace Mr. Bamboo, but like maybe his cousin or something. I think that's a wonderful idea. After breakfast, I finally checked my messages. Most were predictable. My mother had sent a series of increasingly emotional texts, starting with apologies and ending with guilt trips about family obligations. My father had sent a single message. When you're ready to act like an adult, we can talk. Derek, true to form, had sent several messages doubling down on his position, including one that read, "Someday you'll thank me for toughening the kid up." I deleted them all without responding. The surprise came from extended family. My Aunt Sophia and Uncle Robert both sent supportive messages acknowledging that what happened was wrong and offering to talk when I was ready. My cousin Lisa, who had 2 young daughters, sent a particularly thoughtful message about how she'd had similar conflicts with my father about raising girly girls and offering solidarity. Around noon, I decided that Lucas and I needed a day of healing. We drove to his favorite toy store, an independent shop called Wonderland Toys that specialized in high-quality stuffed animals and creative playthings. The owner, Martha, was a kind older woman who listened attentively as Lucas explained what had happened to Mr. Bamboo. "I think I have just what you need," she said, disappearing into the back room. She returned with a panda that was similar to Mr. Bamboo, but distinct in its own way, with softer fur and a gentle expression. "This fellow just arrived yesterday. I think he was waiting for you." Lucas approached the new panda, cautiously touching its ear with one finger. "He feels nice," he whispered. "Would you like to take him home?" I asked. Lucas nodded, then looked up at Martha. "Can I name him Mr. Bamboo Jr.?" "I think that's a perfect name," Martha replied, and rang up the purchase with a generous discount she insisted on giving after hearing our story. We spent the rest of the day doing things Lucas loved, visiting the Children's Science Museum, having lunch at his favorite diner, where the waitresses all knew him by name, and finally stopping for ice cream. Slowly, I watched some of the tension leave his small shoulders, especially as Mr. Bamboo Jr. became integrated into our day. We were just pulling into our driveway around 5 when I noticed a familiar truck parked on the street, my father's meticulously maintained Ford F-150. He was sitting on our front porch steps, looking uncomfortable and out of place in his perfectly pressed khakis and polo shirt. "Lucas, I need you to go inside and start your bath." "Okay," I said, trying to keep my voice casual. "Use the back door. I'll be right in." "Is that Grandpa?" Lucas asked, spotting the figure on our porch. "Yes, but I need to talk to him alone first. Can you do that for me?" Lucas nodded solemnly, clutching Mr. Bamboo Jr. to his chest as we circled around to the back of the house. Once he was safely inside, I approached my father, maintaining a deliberate distance. "You should have called first," I said, by way of greeting. He stood up, hands in his pockets. "Would you have answered?" "Probably not," I admitted. "What do you want, Dad? Can we talk inside?" "I'd prefer Lucas not see you right now. He's still upset." My father's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "Fine. Out here then." We stood in awkward silence for a moment before he finally spoke. "Derek's in trouble at work." Of all the things I expected him to say, this wasn't on the list. What does that have to do with me? "He works at Peterson Tech, in sales." I felt a chill run down my spine. Peterson Tech was where I worked in the software development department. We were a large enough company that I'd never run into Derek at work, and he'd been hired long after I'd established myself there. I didn't know that I said honestly. "We're in different departments." "Well, he's on thin ice. Got a complaint filed against him a few weeks back for something he said to a female colleague. Now there's another complaint and they're threatening to let him go. I waited, knowing there had to be more to this unexpected visit. Your name came up in a meeting. Apparently you're well respected there. A good word from you could smooth things over. The pieces clicked into place. This wasn't an apology visit. This was a transaction. Let me get this straight, I said slowly. Derek burns my son's beloved toys, shows zero remorse, and now you want me to use my professional reputation to save his job. Family helps family, Virgil. That's what we do. Is it because yesterday it seemed like family burns a 6-year-old's treasured possessions to teach him some warped lesson about masculinity? My father sighed heavily, as though I was being deliberately difficult. Look, what happened with the toys was unfortunate. The boys got carried away. The boys. You mean Jason and Tyler? They're children. Derek is their father. He encouraged it, and you defended it. It was just toys, Virgil. They can be replaced. That's not the point, and you know it. The point is that you and Derek think it's acceptable to hurt Lucas emotionally, to force him into some narrow definition of what a boy should be. We're trying to prepare him for the real world. It's not all safe spaces and participation trophies out there. No, it's not. But it's also not all toxic masculinity and emotional repression. The world is changing, Dad. Maybe you should try changing with it. My father's expression hardened. Are you going to help Derek or not? Has he apologized to Lucas? Has he shown any remorse at all for what happened? He's your brother. That's not an answer. This is his career we're talking about. He has a family to support. And I have a son to protect, including from relatives who think nothing of hurting him to prove a point. My father stepped closer, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. You listen to me. I didn't raise you to turn your back on family when they need you. Whatever issues you have with Derek, you put them aside and do what's right. I am doing what's right. I'm teaching Lucas that actions have consequences, that you don't get to hurt people and then expect them to do you favors. This is bigger than some burned toys. It's not about the toys. I finally raised my voice. It's about respect. It's about the fact that neither you nor Derek respects Lucas for who he is. You want to mold him into some outdated ideal of manhood, and I won't let you. My father stared at me for a long moment, his expression a mix of anger and something else, something almost like confusion. So that's it. You're choosing this grudge over helping your own brother. I'm choosing my son's well-being over enabling behavior that hurt him. And frankly, it might be good for Derek to face actual consequences for once in his life. You'll regret this, my father said, his voice cold. When you need family and we're not there, you'll remember this moment. Maybe I conceded. But I'd regret teaching Lucas that it's okay to let people hurt him more. My father turned and walked back to his truck without another word. As he drove away, I felt a complex mix of emotions, relief, sadness, anger, and underneath it all a surprising sense of peace. For perhaps the first time in my life, I had stood up to my father without backing down or compromising. When I went inside, Lucas was waiting in the hallway. Mr. Bamboo Jr. clutched to his chest. Did Grandpa leave? Yes, buddy. He did. Is he still mad at me for having stuffed animals? I knelt down to his level. No, Lucas. And even if he was, that would be his problem, not yours. There is absolutely nothing wrong with you or with loving your stuffed animals. Lucas nodded, processing this. Are we still family with Grandpa and Uncle Derek? We're always family, I said carefully. But sometimes even with family we need to have space when people hurt us. Right now we need some space from Grandpa and Uncle Derek. Because of what they did to Mr. Bamboo. Because of what they did, yes, but more because they didn't think it was wrong or say they were sorry. Lucas considered this, his 6-year-old mind grappling with complex family dynamics. That makes sense, he finally said with a wisdom that made my heart ache. When I push someone on the playground, I have to say sorry before we can play together again. Exactly like that, I agreed, amazed as always by his emotional intelligence. Now how about that bath? And then we can read 3 stories tonight instead of just 1. His face lit up at this unexpected treat. Can we read the one about the panda who goes on an adventure for Mr. Bamboo Jr. to hear? Absolutely, I promised, following him up the stairs, and trying to focus on the present moment rather than the uncertain family future ahead of us. The following week was a minefield of family politics and workplace anxiety. I'd taken 2 days off work to be with Lucas, but eventually I had to return to Peterson Tech and face the possibility of running into Derek. I'd managed to avoid him for years without even realizing we worked for the same company, but now I was hyper-aware of his potential presence. That evening, I called my friend Michael, who had been my roommate in college and remained my closest confidant. After filling him in on the BBQ disaster and my father's subsequent visit, I waited for his perspective. "So let me get this straight," Michael said. "Derek burns Lucas's toys, shows zero remorse, and now expects you to bail him out at work. That's some next-level entitlement." "Pretty much. And my father sees absolutely nothing wrong with that expectation." "What are you going to do?" I sighed, watching Lucas in the backyard through the kitchen window. He was carefully introducing Mr. Bamboo Jr. to our garden, showing him each plant and explaining its purpose. "I don't know. The professional part of me wants to stay completely out of it. Whatever Derek did at work has nothing to do with me. But I keep thinking about my mother, and how this will impact her if Derek loses his job, and about Jason and Tyler. They're just kids and they're being raised with these toxic ideas, but it's not their fault." "You're not responsible for the fallout from Derek's actions, Verge. You know that, right?" "Logically, yes. Emotionally, it's complicated. What would you tell Lucas if he came to you with this situation when he's older?" I considered this. I'd tell him that he's not obligated to shield people from the natural consequences of their own actions. That setting boundaries is healthy. That forgiveness doesn't mean allowing yourself to be mistreated. "Sounds like you know what to do then," Michael said simply. The next morning I received an email from our company's HR director Eliza asking for a meeting. When I arrived at her office, she closed the door and got straight to the point. "Virgil, I'll be direct. Your brother Derek works in our sales department. He's currently under investigation for workplace misconduct, specifically for creating a hostile work environment. He's named you as a character reference." I maintained a neutral expression. "I wasn't aware of that. Given your relationship, I wanted to speak with you privately before proceeding. You're under no obligation to provide a reference, and anything you share would be confidential." "What exactly is Derek accused of?" Eliza hesitated. "I can't go into specifics, but the complaints involve derogatory comments toward female colleagues and intimidating behavior toward a male colleague who objected to those comments." The pattern was sickeningly familiar. Derek treating others as less than for not conforming to his narrow worldview. "I appreciate you bringing this to my attention," I said carefully, "but I need to recuse myself from this situation. Derek and I have a complicated relationship, and I've had limited contact with him in a professional context. I don't feel I can provide an accurate character reference in this instance." Eliza nodded. "I understand and respect that decision. Your professional integrity speaks for itself." As I left her office, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. I hadn't lied or sabotaged Derek, but I hadn't compromised my values either. Whatever happened next would be the result of his own actions. The fallout came swiftly. That evening, my phone exploded with messages from family members. Derek had apparently been suspended pending the conclusion of the investigation, and he'd wasted no time blaming me for not speaking up on his behalf. My mother called sobbing, asking how I could do this to my own brother. My father left a voicemail that consisted mainly of thinly veiled threats about being cut off from the family. Even relatives who had been sympathetic about the BBQ incident seemed to think I'd crossed a line by not helping Derek professionally. The only surprise was a text from Caitlin, Derek's wife. "We need to talk. Just us. Please." I agreed to meet her at a coffee shop halfway between our homes the next day. When I arrived, Caitlin looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, and her usually perfect hair pulled back in a hasty ponytail. "Thank you for coming," she said, clutching her coffee mug like a lifeline. "I know things are tense right now." "That's putting it mildly," I replied. "How are you holding up?" "Honestly, not great. Derek's been impossible to live with since the suspension. He's drinking more, lashing out. The boys are walking on eggshells." I felt a pang of sympathy for my nephews, caught in the crossfire of adult conflicts. I'm sorry to hear that. How can I help? Caitlin looks surprised by the question. You're not angry with me. Why would I be angry with you? Because of what happened to Lucas's toys. I wasn't there when it happened, but I know Derek encouraged it. I considered my words carefully. I'm angry about what happened, but I don't hold you responsible for Derek's actions or my father's attitudes. She nodded, tears welling in her eyes. Tyler confessed to me last night. It was his idea to burn the stuffed animals. He said he thought it would make his dad proud. The revelation hit me like a punch to the gut. That's heartbreaking, Caitlin. I know. And the worst part is he was right. Derek was proud. He bragged about it to his friends, calling it a man-making moment for Tyler. She wiped away a tear. This isn't how I wanted to raise my sons, Virgil. But Derek's influence is so strong, and your father backs him up on everything. Have you talked to Derek about this? I tried. He says I'm being emotional and overprotective, just like. She trailed off. Just like me, I finished for her. Yes. I'm sorry. Don't be. It's what they believe. Caitlin took a deep breath. I didn't come here to ask you to help Derek keep his job. Honestly, I think facing consequences might be the only thing that could possibly make him reconsider his behavior. I came to ask if you and Lucas would be willing to meet with Tyler. He feels terrible about what happened, but Derek won't let him apologize. The request surprised me. You want Tyler to apologize to Lucas? Yes. I think it's important for Tyler to understand that real men take responsibility for their actions. And I think it might help Lucas to know that not everyone in the family thinks what happened was okay. I thought about how this meeting might affect Lucas, weighing the potential benefits against the risk of reopening wounds. I'll need to talk to Lucas first, see how he feels about it. I won't force him if he's not ready. Of course. I completely understand. As we parted ways, Caitlin hugged me unexpectedly. Thank you for not cutting us all off, she whispered. The boys need good male role models in their lives, especially now. The following days brought surprising developments. My Uncle Robert called to tell me that he'd had a serious conversation with my father about his behavior, resulting in a temporary rift between them. My Aunt Sophia invited Lucas and me to her house for dinner, explicitly stating that my father and Derek were not invited. And, most surprisingly, my mother called to say that she'd been doing some soul-searching and realized how her peacekeeping had enabled harmful behavior. I've spent 40 years trying to keep everyone happy, she admitted. But I'm realizing that by never taking a stand, I've been complicit in a lot of hurt. Meanwhile, at work, the investigation into Derek continued. I maintained my professional distance, focusing on my projects and on being present for Lucas, who was slowly recovering from the trauma with the help of a child psychologist recommended by his pediatrician. The most unexpected ally emerged in Amanda, my ex-wife. When she heard what had happened at the BBQ, she was furious on Lucas's behalf. I always knew your brother was a jerk, but this crosses a line, she said during our weekly co-parenting call. What do you need from me? Just consistency, I replied. Lucas needs to know that both his parents are on the same page about this. Absolutely. And for what it's worth, Virgil, I'm proud of you for standing up to your family. I know how hard that is for you. Her support meant more than I could express. Despite our divorce, we'd maintained a foundation of mutual respect, particularly regarding Lucas's upbringing. Her validation of my decisions helped strengthen my resolve during the difficult weeks that followed. The situation with Derek came to a head when he received official notice that he was being placed on probation at work with mandatory sensitivity training and a final warning about his conduct. His reaction was predictably volatile, sending a barrage of accusatory texts, blaming me for not intervening on his behalf. I replied with a simple message. Actions have consequences, Derek. Maybe it's time you learned that lesson. He didn't respond, but later that evening, Caitlin called to let me know that he'd thrown his phone against the wall in rage and was now drinking heavily on the back porch. I felt a complex mix of emotions, satisfaction, that he was finally facing consequences, sadness for what this was doing to his family, and a strange, muted grief for the relationship we might have had in another world. 1 month after the BBQ incident, Lucas and I established new traditions to replace the family gatherings we'd once attended. Sunday afternoons became adventure days, where we'd explore a new part of the city, try a new activity, or simply spend time at home, building elaborate blanket forts and reading books inside them. Lucas continued to bond with Mr. Bamboo Jr., but we also honored the memory of the original Mr. Bamboo. One weekend, we created a small memory box decorated with pandas, where we placed the salvaged remains wrapped in a special cloth. Lucas wrote a heartfelt note to include in the box. "Thank you for being my friend. I will always remember you." The child psychologist, Dr. Rachel Winters, had been instrumental in helping Lucas process his feelings about what happened. "Children are remarkably resilient," she told me during one of our parent consultations, "but they need the space to express their emotions and have them validated. You're doing that for Lucas, and it's making all the difference." She also helped me understand how to navigate the complex family dynamics going forward. "What you're dealing with is generational trauma," she explained. "Your father likely experienced similar rigid expectations about masculinity, and instead of breaking the cycle, he perpetuated it with your brother, who's now doing the same with his sons. By standing up for Lucas, you're not just protecting him, you're disrupting a harmful pattern that could have continued for generations." My mother had been making cautious attempts at reconciliation. She called regularly to check on Lucas, sent thoughtful gifts, including books about emotional intelligence, that I suspect she was reading herself, and most importantly, respected the boundaries I'd established about my father and Derek, not being welcome in our home. "I miss you both," she said during one call, "but I understand why things need to be this way for now. I'm working on Frank, trying to help him see things differently. He's stubborn, but I think losing contact with Lucas has affected him more than he lets on." 2 months after the incident, she asked if she could visit alone. After discussing it with Lucas, who seemed cautiously open to the idea, I agreed. When she arrived, she came bearing not just gifts for Lucas, but a handwritten letter of apology. "I should have protected you," she told him, kneeling to his level. "That's what grandmothers are supposed to do. I'm so sorry I didn't. I'm trying to learn to be braver like you and your dad." Lucas, with the straightforward forgiveness that children often possess, hugged her and said, "It's okay, Grandma. People make mistakes. That's what my therapist says." My father was a harder case. He maintained his position that the family was overreacting to just some toys for weeks. But as the silence between us stretched on and he realized I was serious about keeping Lucas away from him, until things changed, small cracks began to appear in his armor. First came a gruff text message. "The boy's birthday is next month. Can I send something?" I replied that gifts would be welcome as long as they respected Lucas's interests rather than trying to change them. To my surprise, when the package arrived, it contained not the sports equipment or toy weapons I might have expected, but an elaborate art set with professional quality supplies, and a note that read simply, "For my talented grandson." It wasn't an apology, but it was an acknowledgement, however small, that Lucas should be accepted for who he was rather than who my father thought he should be. Derek was another story entirely. The workplace probation had been a significant blow to his ego, and rather than prompting reflection, it seemed to have hardened his resentment. He made no attempts to contact me directly, though I heard through family grapevines that he continued to blame me for his professional troubles. The bright spot in that situation came from Caitlin and the boys. True to her word, she had brought Tyler for a supervised meeting with Lucas. The apology was awkward but sincere, with Tyler explaining that he'd thought burning the toys would make his father proud. "I didn't think about how it would make you feel," he admitted. "My mom says that's called empathy, thinking about other people's feelings. I'm trying to get better at it." Lucas, in a moment of wisdom beyond his years, simply nodded and said, "It's hard sometimes. Feelings are complicated." The boys had played together afterward, tentatively at first, then with increasing comfort. By the end of the visit, they were laughing over a video game. The tension between them dissolved. Caitlin and I watched from the kitchen, both moved by the simple resilience of children. "I've enrolled them both in a different kind of after-school program," she confided. "Less competitive sports, more creative activities. Derek thinks they're in basketball training." "That must be difficult for you," I observed. She shrugged. Necessary, though. I can't change Derek, but I can make sure my boys have other influences in their lives. As the months passed, our family configuration shifted and evolved. My Aunt Sophia and Uncle Robert became more present in our lives, hosting small gatherings that specifically excluded Derek and sometimes my father, depending on his recent behavior. Cousins I'd rarely spoken to before reached out to express support or share similar stories of conflict with the family patriarchs. A surprising turning point came 6 months after the BBQ, when my father showed up unannounced at my doorstep again. This time he didn't lead with demands or accusations. Instead, he asked simply, "Can we talk, just us men?" I invited him in cautiously, making it clear that Lucas was at a playdate and wouldn't be home for hours. My father sat stiffly on the edge of the couch, looking uncomfortable in the colorful living room with its evidence of a child's creative presence everywhere. He cleared his throat several times before speaking. "Your mother's been making me read books," he said finally, "about emotions and parenting and all that stuff. I think it's mostly nonsense, but—" He paused, struggling visibly. "But I've been thinking about my own father, how he treated me, things I swore I'd never do to my own sons." I remained silent, giving him space to continue. "He was a hard man, my old man, military through and through, believed boys should be raised tough. I remember once I had this model airplane I'd built, spent weeks on it. He broke it during an argument, said I was too attached to things." He stared at his hands. I'd forgotten all about that until recently. How much it hurt, how small it made me feel. The parallel wasn't lost on me, but I let him reach the conclusion himself. "I'm not saying what happened with Lucas was right," he continued. "It wasn't. And I should have said something at the time. It's just, Derek reminds me so much of my father sometimes, and I never knew how to stand up to my old man, so I guess I don't know how to stand up to Derek either." It wasn't exactly an apology, but it was perhaps as close as my father could come. A recognition of the cycle, if not yet a commitment to breaking it. "Lucas is a good kid," he added. "Sensitive, yeah, but smart. Reminds me of you at that age before I—" He trailed off. "Before you tried to toughen me up, I finished for him." He nodded, a flicker of regret crossing his weathered face. Maybe that wasn't always the right approach. We talked for over an hour, covering decades of family history and hurt feelings. We didn't resolve everything, not by a long shot, but it was a start. When he left, he asked if he could see Lucas sometime soon. "We'll take it slow," I told him. "But yes, if Lucas is comfortable with it, we can arrange something. With ground rules." "Ground rules," he repeated as if the concept was foreign. Then he nodded. "That's fair." The most profound changes, though, happened within my own home in the quiet moments with Lucas. As he recovered from the trauma, his natural resilience began to shine through. The nightmares became less frequent. His attachment to Mr. Bamboo Jr. evolved from desperate clinging to comfortable companionship, and most importantly, his confidence in expressing his emotions grew stronger. One evening, as we were reading bedtime stories, Lucas suddenly put his hand on the page to stop me. "Dad, can I ask you something important?" "Of course, buddy. Anything." "Are you sad that Grandpa and Uncle Derek don't like the way I am?" The question caught me off guard with its directness. I took a moment to find the right words. "I'm sad that they can't see how amazing you are exactly as you are," I said carefully. "But that's their loss, not ours." Lucas nodded thoughtfully. "Dr. Rachel says some people have a very small idea of how boys should be, but she says there are lots of different ways to be a boy." Dr. Rachel is absolutely right. There are as many ways to be a boy as there are boys in the world. Like how I like art and stuffed animals, and some boys like sports and some boys like both. Exactly like that. He leaned against me, his small body warm and trusting. "I think Uncle Derek and Grandpa have the small idea, but maybe someday they'll learn the big idea." "Maybe they will," I agreed. "And even if they don't, we know the big idea, and that's what matters." A week later, I witnessed the impact of these conversations in a way that brought tears to my eyes. We were at the local park when Lucas noticed another boy about his age sitting alone on a bench crying quietly. Without hesitation, Lucas approached him, Mr. Bamboo Jr. in hand. "Are you okay?" I heard him ask. This is Mr. Bamboo Jr. He's really good at helping when people feel sad." The other boy looked up, tears still streaming down his face. "My brother said only babies cry." Lucas sat down beside him. "My dad says that crying just means you have feelings, and everybody has feelings. Even grown-ups cry sometimes." He offered Mr. Bamboo Jr. to the boy who hesitantly took the stuffed panda. "You can hold him for a while if you want. He's really soft." I watched from a distance, as the two boys talked, Lucas listening intently, as the other child explained about an argument with his brother. Soon they were playing together, the tears forgotten but the connection made. Later, as we walked home, I told Lucas how proud I was of his kindness. "You saw someone in pain, and you helped them. That takes real courage." Lucas considered this. "Is that being tough? Like Grandpa always talks about?" "It's a different kind of toughness," I explained. "The kind that matters most. Being brave enough to be kind, to show your feelings, to help others with theirs. That's true strength." He nodded, satisfied with this definition. "I like that kind of toughness better." "Metu, buddy. Metu." In the months that followed, our family continued to evolve. Some relationships strengthened, others remained distant. My father made halting progress, taking one step forward and two steps back at times, but always returning to try again. Derek remained largely unchanged, though Tyler and Jason continued to visit under Caitlin's supervision, slowly developing a healthier relationship with their cousin. The most important change, though, was within our home, where Lucas thrived in an environment that celebrated his sensitivity rather than trying to suppress it. He grew more confident, more compassionate, and paradoxically more resilient, precisely because he was allowed to feel his emotions fully rather than bottling them up. As for me, I discovered a strength I hadn't known. I possessed the courage to stand firm in protecting my son, even against my own family. It wasn't always easy, and there were days I questioned whether I'd made the right choices. But each time I saw Lucas express himself freely, without fear of judgment or ridicule, I knew that breaking the cycle of toxic masculinity was worth whatever price I had to pay. In the end, protecting my son's right to be fully himself was the most masculine thing I'd ever done, and if that meant redefining what it means to be a man, a father, a son, and a brother, then so be it. Some traditions aren't worth preserving, and some family patterns need to be broken for healing to begin. Have you ever had to stand up to family members for your child's sake? What did you do to protect them while navigating complicated family dynamics? Share your experiences in the comments below, and if this story resonated with you, please hit like and subscribe for more stories about the real challenges of parenting and family relationships. Thank you for joining me today, and remember that true strength often looks different than we've been taught.